Unfortunately, I did not enter 2025 on the greatest of book terms. It's a sad thing, really, because I love books and I love reading and I don't love not wanting to read. But that's exactly how I was feeling at the end of 2024. You know how it is, it's a busy time of year. And to be honest, I definitely DNF'd a book and it did not put me in a great mood and it did not make me want to read. How am I going to reach my 2025 goal of 50 books without wanting to read? No. That is simply not happening. You and I are embarking on an adventure to get out of this book slump. How are we gonna do it? Let's see. Okay, we will not be starting off 2025 in a reading slump if I have anything to say about it. So as soon as I started feeling the slump come on, I reached for a book in my TBR because, to be honest, I have way more books, physical books, that I haven't read just staring at me on this cart, and it's giving me a lot of anxiety because I don't want to have a bunch of bookshelves full of books that I haven't read. That's just not exciting to me, so I need to be reading these books. And the first one that I picked up is The Davenports by Crystal Marquis. I think that's how we're gonna say her last name. I bought this book in what actually is my first episode ever of the bookstore shopping tour in Colorado, specifically in Boulder, and that was in the summer. So it's been 6 months and I haven't picked up this book yet. She was long overdue. But the reason why I decided to read this book, the reason why I have faith that this book is going to pull me out of a reading slump is because I already knew I was interested in reading it because I bought it. Like, I already own it. I already said at some point, this will be an interesting read. So there's an initial interest. I feel like book slumps come on so easily because you don't know what to read and you're looking for something that is enjoyable to you. I've already decided that this is enjoyable enough to spend the money on it. So that alone, I think, is a good place to start when you're trying to get out of a book slump. As far as specific plot reasons why I'm going to read this book, there are a few. This book follows 4 main Black girl characters, and I love Black girl fantasy. I love books that I can feel myself being represented in. So immediately, I'm excited to read this book. 2, there are 4 main characters instead of 1. I think that is a common thing in the books that I have been reading. I've been reading a lot of romance, so there's only 2 main characters that you really care about in romance stories. This is 4, so double the amount of characters to get to know and possibly love. Also, it's not a fantasy book, it is a historical fiction. And that to me still kind of leans far enough fantasy because this takes place in the early 1900s. I was not alive then. I don't know what that looks like, so it might as well be a fantastical world to me, just based on real life events and sometimes people and society. But I don't know what it's like to live in the Black elite of the early 1900s in Chicago and go to all these parties and it matter about getting married or not getting married and liking being a woman in a very strict society or not. So I thought this book would give me some of those escapism vibes that I enjoy in fantasy books in a different kind of font, because if I'm in a slump, it means I want something different. It means I'm looking for something to really sink my teeth into, and I do that the most with fantasy, but I didn't choose a fantasy outright. And so far, I am 202 pages into the book. That is just about halfway, and I can tell you that so far, it's working. I am very excited to pick up this book and read it. I'm really enjoying the 4 main characters. We've got Olivia, who is the oldest sister of 3, and she is a part of a family that is of the Black elite, one of the few Black families in the elite society of Chicago in the 1900s. And this is her 2nd year on the marriage mart, and she's ready to get married. She's ready to step into that very traditional role as a woman. We've also got her younger sister, Helen, who wants the exact opposite. Their father actually became rich because he was a carriage salesman, and he became like the carriage salesman. And Helen likes to get her hands dirty. She likes to work on the carriages that are slowly turning into automobiles, because I think the first automobile was in 1920? I need to fact check that. It was a Ford Model T, I know that. That is the era in which we are reading, where the Ford Model T is starting to come out and cars are starting to be a thing. And Helen loves to work on cars. She does not want to wear a cute dress and dance around. I don't know why she wouldn't, but that's what Helen likes and we respect her for it. We're also following Olivia's best friend, Ruby, who is also in a Black family who is a part of this elite society, but they're not as rich as Olivia and Helen, and they're dealing with some financial struggles. So it's interesting to see her point of view as well. And the last main character we have is, oh my gosh, what is her name? Is it Ashley Rose? Amber Rose? Amy Rose. Okay, Amy Rose, who is their housemaid, pretty much. But she grew up in the house with Olivia and Helen, so she feels like they are sisters. And all of those dynamics have just enough crossover to keep this book very, very interesting because all of these women are looking for love. This is a romance book. I don't know if I mentioned that. This is a romance. It honestly feels like I'm watching Bridgerton in my head. Like I have to remember that this is not Bridgerton and it's not the UK. That's how strong just the aesthetic of this is. I feel like because I've watched Bridgerton and enjoyed it a lot, it's giving me those same types of feelings by reading this book. So if you can't wait for season 3 of Bridgerton either, I would try the Davenports. Halfway through and it's looking great, but the jury is still out on whether or not this gets me out of a book slump. So shall we get to reading? We have an update. I have finished the Davenports, and here are my thoughts. I was a little bit skeptical going into this book because it is told from the perspective of 4 different characters, and I was just kind of like, that's a lot. That's a lot of people to remember. But because they're so intertwined with one another, it was really, really easy to follow. In fact, I found myself wishing that I got more characters' perspectives in some cases, and sometimes I wanted to reread the scene through the other character's perspective. So that was a pleasant surprise. I was not expecting that. Most of the books I've been reading have been from only one character's perspective, at most 2. I'm actually thinking of Powerless right now. Also, this book was very character-driven, less plot-driven. It was less about what was going on and more about how the characters felt about what was going on or what they wished was going on. Just their intimate thoughts and feelings, and that was a little bit refreshing. I think a part of my book slump problem is that I've been reading a lot of romance books back to back to back to back, and love a romance. We'll always love a romance book, but I think the problem is romance books rely really heavily, to me, on tropes, and when you keep reading the same trope, it becomes very, very predictable, nothing is very shocking, and it ends up feeling boring. And while this is a romance, because all of the characters involved have some sort of romantic situation going on, sometimes they're intertwined with one another. Even though that's the case, it didn't feel overly romantic to me. It didn't feel like we were following a romance trope from beginning to end. Like, this whole thing is not enemies to lovers because of those historical story elements. And that was really refreshing. It really broke it up for me because I found myself caring about what was going to happen. Another spoiler-free thought, because I like to keep these videos pretty spoiler-free in case you want to read the book as well. These 4 main characters, I'm kind of obsessed with them in the sense that I want to see all of them win. I want their dreams to come true. I want them to get what they want. And that being said, there is a sequel to this book because it kind of ends at a point where you're wishing you had more, at least for me. I felt like I needed to know what was going to happen next. It's not necessarily a cliffhanger, maybe a little bit, maybe like a ledge hanger. And so I will be picking that up sometime and reading it. Which begs the question, have we escaped the book slump? I think that there's only one real way to know, and that is by testing it with another book. This is the Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. Aiden, if you're watching this, I am so excited to finally be reading your book. Aiden and I have been mutuals on TikTok and I think Instagram now for a little bit. He kindly sent me his books, both of them. It is a duology, and I thought now would be a great time to dive right in. Here is why. The whole point of this video is to help you get out of a book reading slump. I got lucky, and I think the Davenports did that for me, but we need to know for sure. How do we know for sure? We're gonna read another book, and if we finish it and feel happy about it, I consider that being out of a reading slump. But if we finish it and we are not happy about it, or we're just not excited to pick up another book, we've got more work to do. Before I get into what this book is about, let me tell you why it was my next choice to test whether or not we're truly out of this slump. 1, this book is also on my physical TBR. 2, I think this book is going to challenge one of my personal big book biases, and that is the fact that I do not read a lot of books with male main characters. I 100% gravitate towards female main characters and female perspectives, and this book follows a male main character. I think that's important, especially when you're trying to get out of a book slump, because the reason why you're probably in a book slump is you've been reading the same types of things, and it's starting to bore you. So now is your time to branch out. What are some similarities in the books that have gotten you into this slump? Okay, we figured that out. Let's try something different. Let's try the opposite. However, this book does fall into one of my other book biases, which is fantasy books. That will always be a book bias of mine. If you're here on this channel, you watch my videos, it's probably one of yours. So we're not trying to find something completely out of the box, because if you try something too far into left field and you don't like it, you're still in a book slump. My goal is to crawl out of this book slump. So we've got something that I love, fantasy books, and something that I haven't read a lot of, male main characters. This book is also a part of a duology, and I feel like a lot of fantasy series are trilogies, and something about it being a duology is enticing, right? Like, you're done in 2 books, which is sometimes sad, we'll find out, but it's also kind of a motivator in a weird way. Am I the only one that's like that? Let me know if you're like that. This is quite an adventurous book because it follows teen semidioses, demigods, and the world that they find themselves in, which is a little bit modern but still has a lot of mythology. The best semidioses are selected to compete in the Sunbearer trials to help protect their land and keep it safe from celestial monsters. And the way that they do that is by sacrificing the loser of the trials. So pretty high stakes, considering it's their lives. Let me read you some of the back for more context. As each new decade begins, the sun's power must be replenished so that Sol, their non-binary god creator, can continue traveling along the sky and keep the chaotic obsidian gods at bay. The obsidian gods are their opposing force. Sol selects 10 of the most worthy semidioses to compete in the Sunbearer trials. The winner carries light and life to all the temples of Reino del Sol, but the loser has the greatest honor of all. They will be sacrificed to Sol, their body melted down to refuel the sunstones, protecting the world for another 10 years. An honor, you say? Teo, a 17-year-old jade semidios and the trans son of the goddess of birds, isn't worried about the trials, at least not for himself, but his best friend Nia, who is a gold semidiosa and a shoo-in for the trials. While he trusts her abilities, the odds of becoming the sacrifice are 1 in 10. In this world, the gods are kind of separated into a few different levels. We have the golds, who are like the gods, capital Thee, the gods. The jades, of which Teo is one of, are underneath them, so they are not treated with the same respect as the golds. For example, the golds are sent to the academy where they train and hone in on their powers. Teo, who is a jade semidios, lives the regular life in a city full of mortals. He goes to mortal school, and he's generally used to being the only semidios around. But then, for the first time in over a century, the impossible happens. Sol chooses not 1, but 2 jade competitors, Teo and Sio, a 13-year-old child of the god of bad luck. Now they have to compete in 5 trials against gold opponents who are more powerful and better trained because they're given the resources to be. Worst of all, Teo's annoyingly handsome ex-best friend, Aurelio, is favored to win. Teo is determined to get himself and his friends through the trials unscathed for fame, glory, and their own survival. So I'm pretty far along in this book already. I am on chapter 19, which is this much through the book, and I will be holding all of my thoughts until we finish it. Hello. It is a very January day today. It's like really cloudy, only 70 degrees, which is nice for Floridian. Originally, I wanted to pop in my AirPods and go on a little walk while I finish the end of the Sunbearer trials because I stopped with about 30-ish minutes left of reading. However, I forgot my AirPods. And I'm already at like the park, so no listening to audiobooks for me. But while we're on audiobooks, may I suggest that as a solution if you are trying to get out of a book slump? I don't know what drove me to both listen to the Sunbearer trials and read it on the Kindle, but I'm kind of glad that I did, because whenever I found myself just kind of not getting bored with the book, just getting bored with reading, or like a little bit unmotivated to read, it was really nice just to switch it up and listen to the book instead. And don't let anybody tell you that audiobooks are not real books. I don't believe that at all. I think that that's a very dumb opinion. They are literally called audiobooks. Argue with the wall. If part of the reason you're in a book slump is because you're finding it like unmotivating, a little bit hard, a little bit difficult to pick up a book, sit down and read, definitely consider an audiobook, because you can do stuff while you're listening. You can clean your house. You can go for a walk just like I planned to. You could declutter your closet. Whatever you need to be doing, you can multitask and you're still reading. Even though I forgot my AirPods, we are still finishing the Sunbearer trials because I have my Kindle in her cute Kindle carrying pouch. So, shall we find a nice place where I won't be too embarrassed by my facial expressions? Because, guys, the ending of this book, this is obviously spoiler-free vlog, but we gotta finish it now. My heart is racing right now. She really just said that to her child. I cannot. I still really want to go on a walk, so why don't we, while I just give you my thoughts, because I just finished the book. Oh my gosh, I loved it. Honestly, I'm going to give it 5 stars. I don't even have to think about it. 5 stars for so many reasons. One, you know what? Actually, I don't think I can go for a walk. I think I have to sit down. Okay, because one, the friend group, Teo and Nia and Sio and Aurelio and Aristella and everybody in the Sunbearer trials, I love them. They are all just so really written for being semidioses, like for being demigods. They're really just feel like real people to me. Like, I feel like I have met some of these people, and that's just a really like heartwarming feeling. Even though I love the characters, I love that the story is plot driven. It was so adventurous, lots and lots of action, because you are following these characters through the entirety of the Sunbearer trials. And these trials are intense, okay? They're intense, but they're short. Like, I feel like most of them were 10 minutes, One of them was an hour long, but within these 10 minutes, it feels like a lifetime. The things that these semidioses have to go through and just the choices they have to make. And the stakes are really high because they are trying to refuel the soul stones to protect their people for another decade. And just the looming thing of somebody being sacrificed at the end. Imagine spending weeks with a group of people. There's only 10 of you, by the way, and you're getting to know each other, you're becoming kind of friends, knowing that one of you is going to have to literally unalive the other. Wild for that one. What else did I just absolutely love about this? Oh, because they're semidioses and their parents are gods, the whole parent-to-child relationship really differs between the gods. Some of them are really close with their parents, like Teo and his mom, Quetzal, are, to me, feel very close and very loving. There are other semidioses in this book where that is definitely not the case. I'm so happy. I keep smiling because I want to immediately download the second part of this book and just start listening because I need to know where this duology goes. I need to know. The ending had me gagged. I honestly was not expecting it. I wasn't. I was expecting maybe a little something to happen, but what actually happened, did not guess that at all. Genuinely shocked, gooped and gagged in the best way. The thing happened and I did not want to stop reading. I did not want to put the book down. I forcibly did because I wanted to finish it with you, and I'm really glad that I did, but the whole time, shocked. I was listening to the book at the time and I had to press pause and just close my phone and go to sleep because if I was to stay up just thinking about that, okay, I'm really trying to keep this spoiler free. So all I'm going to say is that you should definitely read the Sunbearer Trials if you love fantasy, if you are looking for an adventure, and the adventure does continue because it's a duology. I cannot believe this book has 2 5-stars. We are really starting out 2025 so strong. All of that being said, I think we have successfully cleared the book slump. I think we have, because I'm going to immediately start reading the second book, Celestial Monsters, and I'm just saying, I don't see this world getting any worse. I think I'm really lucky in the sense that the first 2 books that I tried to get out of a book slump worked. It's not always the case, and that's okay. I think that's the fun part about reading, is that you start to learn what you like, what you don't like, what tropes interest you, what tropes you kind of get bored of, things that you can constantly rely on. I know for a fact a fantasy book is going to do it for me 9 times out of 10 because I just like to escape reality. I also know that diverse characters are going to do it for me every time. And this is actually the first book that I've read where the main character is a transgender boy, and I really love that, and I want to keep diversifying my reading in the books that I've decided to pick up this year. That is a big goal of mine, diversify both the things in the book, characters, plot, etc., and the genres of book. So you can definitely expect way more reading vlogs this year, so subscribe if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you want to keep up with me in real time, a little bit more real time, you should definitely follow me on Instagram, TikTok, if she is still around by the time this video is posted. It's just at Melizza Black. I would love to connect with you there. You can also follow me on Storygraph and Fable. I am tracking all the books that I am reading this year on both of those apps, at Melizza Reads. And I think that brings us to the end of this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.